Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That's right, we're back to talk about Larry. Another episode of Life with Larry.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother...
Well, as you guys know, Larry has a sordid past. No one quite understood what he was up to when he moved up to the mountains. A lot of people that lived around the area didn't really take to him like that. They seemed to think he was up to something. Old Larry, well, he had his reasons. We never really found out, never really talked about it, till one day. Well, let's just say, give a man enough alcohol, he'll tell you anything. And yet, he did. As Larry would tell me the story of what caused it all, what drove him to his insanity. Well, simply put, it's one bad plane ride with one bad landing. It all started 20 years ago on that fateful day that Larry and his little boy Timmy, well, they decided to take a trip to try to recover from the loss of Timmy's mother and Larry's wife. As Larry would sit back and thought of those old days, he knew he was going to have to face them one day. Those memories, those nightmares, the things that island did to him, just too much for a man to bear. So Larry decided to come clean with the whole story to me. Proceeded to begin to tell me everything that happened on that island that day. For never was Larry ever the same again. Sometimes things will change you, maybe for the better, sometimes for the worse. And well, poor Larry had downright scarred the man. Larry had no clue what was going to happen that day. The only thing he could tell me was the man in red. The man in red, the devil man in red. That's all he kept repeating to me. I didn't make sense of it. But as he told the story, I hung by, clenched fist in hand, upset and angry for the man, before everything started to make sense. The following story is Larry's recount of exactly what happened. It's only the beginning, for there's way too much to talk about in one day. And for another day, we'll continue it. But for now, here's the story of Larry and how his life was turned this way. Larry finally came to after the plane crashed. He scrounged up what resources he could find. A little bit of food, some canned drinks, anything. While looking around though, he did find a manifest of all the passengers on the plane. He grabbed it just in case, because he didn't know what was going on. All he could remember was the haunting image of the man in red reaching down and taking his son from him. That haunting image stayed with him and was his motivation to try to find young Timmy. That's all he could do is hold on to it. And as if like magic, it was amazing. That instinct to survive, to live through this, to find his son kicked in. So Larry continued to find more stuff he could use. He looked around, he knew there had to be more survivors on this island, and he had to find them. But the first thing he noticed, there seemed to be some sort of village here. She didn't even know what was going to happen next. Larry grabbed up all the things he could carry. Any kind of sticks, rocks, any extra food, medicine. There's a plethora of things that had left over from the airplane crash, so he took anything he could. Larry knew how to survive. If anything, he could get through this. But what he saw in that village was going to scar him for life. Larry still wasn't sure where exactly it crashed. Nothing really looked familiar. Seemed like it was a tropical type area, but he still didn't know. This village, though, inspired him. He thought maybe he'd be able to find help. As he entered the village, though, things started to change. It looked like there were cannibals that lived here. Larry didn't know what to expect. He'd done a lot in his survival days. He'd been to many places. Some were not even human, no other human had ventured forth before. But what he found in this village, he wasn't prepared for. He wasn't prepared at all. Larry found one of the passengers. Looked like it was the tennis pros riding up in first class. Well, at least he went out with the ball. That's just bad. So bad. He kind of even smirked when he told me that. I tell you now, Larry's a sick guy. I understand more though as he told me to continue to tell me these stories. There's a lot of things that man saw. Some things you can't unsee. A man with the tennis racket shoved down his throat. Well, time kind of gets to you a little bit. He found people disemboweled. He didn't know if they were passengers or who they were. Some of them had shirts on, though. Like a company, a logo of some sort. He didn't know what to find. It was just shocking. Shocking, to say the least. Old Larry told me, eventually, he was able to find somebody who survived the crash as well. 2 friends. So now, instead of one trying to survive, there was 3 people. And survive, well, they were able to. When you got 3 people to be able to watch your back, sometimes it makes it easier. But what happened before he found these people? Larry wouldn't tell me. He said it was the most nightmaric, horrific event in his life, and he doesn't want to remember it right now. Maybe one day we'll get him to tell us the truth. But for now, well, this is where our story's going to pick up. So old Larry, having found 2 friends and companions, they decided to start making a shelter. They'd already figured out that the cannibals were aggressive. Wildlife, not so bad. They could survive off the plants, the berries, the animals. There seemed to be a lot of rabbits, iguanas, deer, birds. There's all sorts of things. Sea turtles, sharks, you name it. The thing that bothered Larry the most, though, was the fact that there was all sorts of diverse animals here. He couldn't believe it. He thought he even saw snow up on one of the mountain peaks up above. He couldn't believe it. He didn't know where they were. The flight path that they had taken, well, it was supposed to be over the south, more Caribbean style. But now, for some reason, it wasn't like they were in the northwest, the east, the south. He didn't know where they were. They couldn't figure it out. And where they thought they were supposed to be, there was no island on that map. So they scoured the beaches, and more weird things continued to happen. They found several sharks beached and dying. They found sea turtles running from the ocean, literally, trying to make it back on land. There were so many weird things starting to happen, they couldn't figure it out. What they did know was that at nighttime, cannibals came looking, and they wanted something. Most likely, they wanted them. The only way they were able to survive was to build up into the trees. That's what they're going to have to do. So Larry and his new friends set out to find a place to build the perfect home, at least to get them by. They didn't know what the weather was going to be like, but they knew they had to stay off the ground to get away from those cannibals. Never quite understood what he was talking about. Still don't. But I could really see a picture of him. That poor man, though, when he talked about him, he said he got cold sweats. Just the most horrific time of his life. Proceeded to tell me the story of after they built their new home, what happened. The first night of living in their treehouse, they sat down to have some food. They didn't know what was going to happen. They'd already killed some cannibals that had attacked them. They're trying to burn their bodies. Apparently, if you got rid of the evidence, the cannibals would leave you alone for a while. If not, they would send more, and boy did they. Apparently, they'd missed a body. The cannibals, well, they wanted their revenge. You never know who your friends are until you're running for your life from hungry, ravenous cannibals. You see, they came out of nowhere. Matter of fact, they jumped them. These guys, well, they were just brutal. They didn't know what to take no for no, and they sure weren't going to go away. So, they did the only thing they could. They snuffed out those cannibals, but they knew more would be back. They just kept coming. They'd even take you in your sleep if you weren't there. If you were all alone, you might wake up in their cave, in their dens. It was horrific. So horrific. Well, days turned into weeks, and well, weeks, they turned into months. A lot of time had passed since old Larry had crash landed on the island. Him and his new friends, Vamp and Cat, well, they're out of resources. They decided to go into the villages to see if they could find anything. No matter how many times they went on these little adventures, they always ran into something. It's like these cannibals, well, they just kept coming back. Old Vamp and Cat had never seen the village. They said when the plane crashed, they could hear screams coming from it. So they decided to steer clear. It was the best decision that saved their life. There were only 3 survivors left, and well, they weren't finding anybody else. It'd been months since they ran into each other, and since then, all they could do is find bodies of the other passengers. That was it. That day would single-handedly mark where it all started going wrong for the group. After leaving the village, another cannibal tribe decided to start chasing them and hunting them again. Larry got separated from the group, and his only escape, well, was the ocean. And where he was, apparently, there were a lot of sharks. Larry had to swim around the coast on the rocks and try to make it to safety. Unfortunately, that's where the story's going to end for today. We know Larry made it. We know, based on the current time. But what Larry went through when they got back together, let's just say the horrors, they continued and they got worse. So this has been the tale of Larry. Call it the prequel, if you will. But this is why Larry's Larry. And this is what happened to him. I've been Old Man Tucker. This has been The Life of Larry.